Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited to bring this to you. It's the final ATP Power Rankings for the US Open. We're going to get into it. This, of course, is not the final Power Rankings. This is the Power Rankings, the first edition we did just at the beginning of the US Open series. We're going to update it. I'm going to talk you through my thinking behind it, really, and then we're going to break it down. I genuinely can't wait for this. It's going to be fantastic. And I'm sure a lot of you will not agree, and that's fine because you know what? That's what makes sport so incredible. People have different opinions. I'm interested to know your guys' top 10 rankings for the US Open. If you haven't watched a power ranking video, we're going to quickly talk about the criteria. Then I'll go through it 1 to 10. And of course, we'll touch upon Cincinnati last week, Canada, and a lot more as well. Before we get into it, though, remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, remember to leave a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Helps us out a great deal. Thank you to everyone that is still liking the videos, still sharing them, still leaving a review. It helps a huge amount, and we really do appreciate it. Okay, let's get into this. First of all, criteria. So for those of you who might be tuning in and it's your first time on the channel, we do power rankings on here. For each Grand Slam, we do a couple of versions of it before the start of a Grand Slam. Now, this is going to be our final one for the US Open, so this is going to be set in stone, cemented for the Grand Slam, and then we'll see how, how the rankings hold up at the US Open. Now, these rankings are, I guess you could say, they're like a form guide. We're basing it mainly on form recently, so we're taking into account, of course, the US Open series that's just happened, Cincinnati, Montreal, even events like Los Cabos where Medvedev won and Norrie made the final in Mexico, other events as well in the last few weeks on the hard courts, and then we will also cater in form this year. So looking at Wimbledon, the French Open, Australia, a little bit more emphasis on Australia because it's another hard court Grand Slam. Does play slightly differently, and we'll talk about that in a second. But also looking at Wimbledon and the French Open or Roland Garros, because a lot of players can have a year where their form is higher or lower and they carry momentum throughout the year. And we've seen that with so many different players, right? If your name is not Nadal, Djokovic, or Federer, most likely you're going to be a little bit inconsistent throughout your career year on year. And that's just the way it is because everyone else is human. And the third criteria, the third factor is going to be the form from these players in prior or previous US Open tournaments. So some players might not have ever played a US Open tournament before if they're that young. They may have only played one or two. We're not going to hold it against them. We're going to say, okay, that's fine. We're then going to place more emphasis on your recent form, your hardcourt form. Let's look at that. But of course, people like Nadal, Medvedev, Kyrgios, all these guys, they've played a lot of US Opens. They've also won US Opens, so that needs to be factored in as well. But that's the tertiary category. The main one is to do with form, and then we also will factor in, to a degree, historic results. Okay, let's get into it without further ado. So number one, now, can we keep Rafael Nadal at number one? He has been very good this year, of course, winning the Australian Open, winning the Roland Garros, and his semi-finals of Wimbledon, had to pull out because of abdominal. Fine. That happens. Had a really bad injury. Came back this week after a long layoff, so hadn't played since Wimbledon any competitive matches, and played Borna Coric. Now, Borna Coric, we know, just won Cincinnati, which means Nadal lost to Borna Coric in his first match in the second round of Cincinnati, and it was a 3-setter. He was actually, if I'm not mistaken, he was the only player to take a set of Coric the whole week. And it was a great win for Coric, and for Nadal, a disappointing loss. And actually now Coric joins Djokovic as one of the only players to have a winning head-to-head. Well, one of the only active players to have a winning head-to-head against Rafael Nadal, which is a pretty interesting stat, 3-2. Can we read a lot into it? Not particularly. I think anyone can lose in a first round or second round. I mean, it was his first match because he got a bye in the first round. And especially after a layoff as well, it can happen. Coric played some inspired tennis and clearly, was in form because he went on to win the tournament, beat some incredible players, and we'll talk about that soon. But for Nadal, it was probably a little bit of a wake-up call to say, okay, we're no longer on the clay anymore. We're no longer on the clay. We're no longer on the grass. It's a different surface. It's playing differently. And I need to be close to 100% to really give it a good go and go deep. In saying that, the Australian Open, he had a really long layoff and somehow managed to win the tournament, which is incredible because Australia is the quicker of the two tournaments in terms of speed of court. It's a lot quicker, I would say. The US Open has got quicker over the last few years, and I know a lot of people in the comment section have mentioned that, and I take it on board. It's still slower than Australia. It's still slower than Australia from what I've seen, and the stats kind of behind it from the little bit of digging that I did. And it's still slower than Wimbledon. So it's still the third slowest hard course, or third quickest Grand Slam out of the four, of course, Roland Garros being the slowest. So yes, it's quickened, which is a disadvantage to someone like a Nadal, but it's still not lightning quick like Australia, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how I see that. Or that is how I see it. It may have gone even quicker this year. Who knows? But I did hear Gil Gross talking about it, and I tend to agree in a way that Cincinnati is probably a better yardstick to how people are going to perform at the US Open because it is a little bit quicker than Montreal or Toronto, and the US Open has gotten a little bit quicker. So the speed differential or speed difference is a lot less, I think, between the US Open in Cincinnati than the US Open in Canada, which Canada can be a bit slower. I get that, and I will be placing even a little bit more importance on Cincinnati, mainly because I think there will be some people that we will give the benefit of the doubt to because they had really deep runs at Canada, and I don't think their performances in Cincinnati were reflective of how they're going to potentially do at the US Open or their form. Let's get into it. So Nadal number one, I don't agree with now. As a Rafa fan, it disappoints me, but that's just the way it is. Medvedev has to be at number one. I mean, he made a semi-finals of Cincinnati. He'd won Los Cabos, of course, lost to Kyrgios in Canada, which there's no harm in that or no shame in that because Kyrgios is probably since the start of the grass court swing the most informed player, has a win percentage above 70%. He's been playing some great tennis. We'll talk about him as well because he does make the top 10 and how he got on this week. But Medvedev lost to him when Kyrgios was playing great tennis. And won Los Cabos, made the semis of Cincinnati, lost to Tsitsipas, who played some inspired tennis as well. Really good serve and volley, and it's the only time Medvedev has lost to him on outdoor hard. So a great win, and of course, a budding rivalry. Great to see between two players of very different styles and different personalities, but one that I think we will see for many years to come, and I hope we do because it's an exciting matchup. It really is. But Medvedev, I think rightly so, given he's the US Open champion, given he won at Los Cabos, given that he's gone deep at Cincinnati this week, and lost to Kyrgios in Canada. I mean, that's, as I said, no shame in that. He's also probably the most suited potentially to the surface, given that it's a bit quicker. He loves the hard courts. He loves this time of year. He peaks for it. The only question mark will potentially be his form in comparison to last year. Maybe not serving as well as he would like. He's normally an extremely effective server, and he's still very effective, but I think he'll be slightly concerned that Tsitsipas made so many returns in that semi-final. That will be something that he'll look into and think, why has that happened? Because normally Tsitsipas on a quicker hard court like this, or a hard court that isn't super slow, will struggle with the returns because he's not a world class. Well, he's a world class. He's not an elite returner. He is someone who will return well on the clay, slow bounce, high bounce. On these hard courts, though, he struggles to hit the returns, especially even the second serve returns, because he doesn't and won't commit to the block return on the second serve. On the first serve, he will, and at times can have some success. But his returning is improving, Tsitsipas, but not improving so much that, in my eyes, it should have closed the gap between himself and Medvedev. Some great tactical, I guess, tactical changes that I think Tsitsipas made against Medvedev, serve and volleying, etc., just to simplify it. Of course, lots of different nuances to that. And yeah, like a great performance, but that's just the one question mark I think around Medvedev is he had, I know, some surgery recently or a procedure done medically, and I'm wondering whether that's hindering his serving at all. And I'm hoping not, because he needs to be at probably near to 100%, or 90% at least, to really go deep and win this tournament. But it's very open. That's what's really exciting about the US Open this year. It is open. Number 2 will be Nadal, because I think he rightfully so should stay there, given that he's won 2 out of the 3 Grand Slams this year, given that he's won the US Open 4 times. I mean, look, he lost to Coric, but there's just such a small sample size to base his hardcore form on. But with the big 3, you don't really need to have too much to look at, in the sense that they're going to come in, and if they're fully fit, which I think he will only enter if he's fully fit, then they're going to give it a good go, and they're going to be extremely dangerous. So I think rightfully so, he's at number 2. Then this is where it gets interesting, because where do we now rank these guys? So I had Kyrgios at 3, Sinner at 4, Alcaraz at 5, FA at 6, Norrie at 7, Tsitsipas at 8, Rublev at 9, Fritz at 10. That was my list, right? Now, her catch since has won in Montreal. He also lost to Isner this week, but I think he gets a pass because, I think he does get a pass because, one, Isner's an incredible server, but not just that. I think he was tied. He played the singles and doubles in Montreal, won both of them. So we'll talk about him, but he will make the list in my eyes. But number 3, who do we put in at number 3? Do we stick with Kyrgios, who's been in good form, but was a little bit disappointing this week? With Fritz, Fritz is a fantastic player, and we know how dangerous he can be, especially on hard court as well. Blew Kyrgios away, really, and I know he was tired, and I think he's got a little bit of a niggle as well, because at the end of Canada, when obviously he lost in the end, he did say that he was looking forward to having a rest, and a lot of people thought he might even miss Cincinnati and skip it just to stay ready for the US Open. He didn't. He chose to play it. In the end, losing to Taylor Fritz, and I think that was probably a good thing to lose earlier on, because I think he needed the rest. But he's still very dangerous and a very informed player. But do I put Kyrgios there, or do I put Alcaraz, who made the semi-finals of Cincinnati, played some good tennis, lost to Norrie in a very, very tight match, 2 tiebreakers, then lost a third, 6-4. Norrie getting his first win over Alcaraz. I'm going to go with Kyrgios. I'm going to stick him. I'm going to stick. I'm not going to twist. I'm going to stick, because I just think, I know Alcaraz made the semi-finals, and I get that this week, but given that he lost to Taylor Fritz, and given his physical state, I think, and just maybe fatigue, I think that needs to be factored in. Number 4, though, is Alcaraz. It's not going to be Sinner. I know Sinner had a little bit of a run, but ended up losing to Felix in the end. A really, really good win for Felix. We'll talk about him in a second. But Alcaraz is my number 4. Now, Carlos has been probably not as good as a lot of people would have thought in this hardcourt swing, and that's not disrespectful at all. I think it's actually respectful, even, because people have such high expectations of the youngster, and look, he is only young, and that's why he has had these types of results. He lost in the first round, of course, in Canada, which was a really, really difficult result for him to take, I would imagine. And Tommy Paul did really well in the end. It was an incredible match to watch. And it's one of those ones that you look at it and think, okay, you can lose a thriller like that. It happens. But in Cincinnati, if the same thing happened, then he's moving, he's pummeling down the rankings for me. Instead, though, he put in some decent performances, beat McDonald and then Cilic in straight sets, made the quarters, not semis of Cincinnati, excuse me. And yeah, so quarterfinals. Now, what are we thinking? Quarterfinals, 7-6, 6-7, 6-4 win for Cam Norrie. Very, very tight. Cam Norrie makes the semis. He's very tired after the Alcaraz match, I think, and Coric just playing really well, a bit fresher, and blows Norrie off the court. Alcaraz surely stays or sticks at 4, and he moves up a spot mainly because I don't feel like anyone else should be at 4 apart from him. If we take in his form this year as well and how he's played on different surfaces, I don't feel as if anyone else warrants being at 4 if we're taking the whole year and also the last few weeks into consideration. And that's why, if I'm being honest, after Medvedev and Nadal is so open, and you can have them in any kind of order or permutation, and it's hard to argue with the selection because you can make arguments for everyone to be in different spots. And that's what I think is really exciting me. And even Nadal, the fact that he lost, the fact that Medvedev lost to Tsitsipas, it then opens it up even more. And that's what I want. That's what I want. I want a US Open which is going to be highly competitive. We're going to see really close matches. And I feel like that's what we're going to get. I feel like that's what this is leading towards. We shall see. So Alcaraz at number 4. Now, number 5. Who are we going to pick at number 5? We've got a few options. Even. It's an interesting one because Yannick Sinner was in my power rankings. I'm not sure whether he's going to stay there because he was at 4, and this is, of course, this is after the Croatia Open where he beat Alcaraz in the final. He lost to Pablo Carreno Busta in the round of 16, who ended up winning Montreal, and then lost to Felix. Did beat Kokkinakis and Kekmanovic. Kokkinakis, though, that was a really close match. Won 8-6 in the tiebreaker in the third set. That was a marathon of a match. And then Felix lost in 3 sets. Watched that match and did a commentary. And Felix was playing some good tennis, but I think Sinner will be disappointed to lose the second set tiebreak after taking the first set 6-2. Felix turned it around, though, nicely, breadsticking him in the third set. So number 5 is an interesting one. I'm going to go with Cam Norrie, actually. I'm going to go with Cam Norrie. Now, you might say that is a pretty big one. And actually, are we going to go with Cam Norrie? You know what? We are going to reward Stefanos Tsitsipas. We're going to reward him. Because I do think after losing to Jack Draper, after losing to Draper in the Canadian Open, I was very skeptical. I was thinking, okay, Tsitsipas has gone off the boil a little bit, and he's had a very, very interesting year, I would say. It's not one that I feel he's made a lot of improvements in. The only thing that I could point towards is, I think in the grass court swinging, he played a lot of grass court matches. I could see improvements. I know he lost early in the end at Wimbledon, but that was because he played Kyrgios, who's just pretty good and made the final. And there was no harm in that. And he put up a good display as well. So some improvements there. And the returning is slowly improving. But Tsitsipas at 5 for me is definitely, I think, warranted. Lost to Draper in Canada, but then redeemed himself really nicely in Cincinnati even. I mean, the wins, look, it's Krajinovic in straight sets, Schwartzman in straight sets, Isner in 3, Medvedev in 3, and then, of course, lost to Coric in the final. A little bit disinterested after the first set loss and lost to tiebreaker 7-love. There's a couple of red flags there because he definitely wasn't chasing balls at times. He was just leaving them. There are a few rallies where Coric was hitting a backhand on the line or forehand on the line, and he didn't hit his spot, so it ended up being kind of almost central. And Tsitsipas had been dragged out, and he just didn't bother going for the ball. He just let it go past him. Watched it go past him. And I was just thinking, this is bizarre. This is the type of thing you might see in club level tennis when someone isn't particularly fit, or they're just, they're fed up. And it was almost as if he was a little bit fed up with the situation. His dad was talking to him a lot as well. in the corner. Of course, on-court coaching is allowed now, and they were showing it a lot, and he was talking to Tsitsipas a lot. Tsitsipas wasn't really responding at all. He was kind of just listening. He's got Mark Philippoussis in his, well, I was going to say corner like it's a boxing match, but in his box, he was pretty quiet for periods of it. And his dad was speaking. It's almost as if his dad's got a bit too much power to kind of just speak whenever he wants. And Tsitsipas, I'm not sure whether he should still be having his dad in the box, honestly, because it seems to do him more harm than good. He was speaking a lot, and really, as soon as he started speaking a lot, it was almost as if Tsitsipas was like, I'm going to rebel against you. Like he'd kind of gone back to being a teenager. I'm going to rebel against you, and I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to almost. I don't think he tanked the match, but there was definitely some points where he just gave up. Was like, okay, yeah, too good, whatever. Yeah, cool. There definitely was. There was a lack of effort, and that's weird because I think Tsitsipas generally is very good when it comes to that. He doesn't just throw in the towel; he does try and fight. So that was a bit disappointing to see. But I don't think we'll see the same at the US Open. To be fair, I think he will. Maybe he needs to get that out of his system. Maybe it was a long time coming. Just got it out of the way, and hopefully we'll see him back to near his best come the US Open. But it was a really, really good week. And I think the win over Medvedev, I can't exaggerate enough what a big win this is, because he had a 7-2 losing head-to-head against Medvedev going into that match, had never won an outdoor hard court match against Medvedev, only won the single indoor hard court match, which was in the ATP Tour Finals, where he beat Medvedev fine. Indoor hard, though, very different to outdoor hard in a way. And Medvedev, of course, had just blown Tsitsipas away in hard courts generally. And the gap just seemed too big in terms of ability and quality. Tsitsipas has a similar hold on Medvedev on clay courts, but this will be a massive, massive, I think, mental boost for Tsitsipas to get the win over Medvedev the way he did, the way he served and volleyed. I loved it. I was really enjoying watching it. I think the way that he was setting up the points was point construction was really, really good, intelligent, and was happy to trade forehand to forehand, happy to come to the net at the right times. Wasn't cautious on the approaches, and I talked about that in my preview for the semi-finals. I said he can't be cautious approaching the net, and he wasn't. He committed to it. If you miss, sometimes you miss. That can happen, but generally was very, very good with it. So that, to me, was a good and positive sign for sure. What I would also say is Tsitsipas, the backhand side is something to keep an eye out on, because he was slicing a lot to Medvedev, and I think Medvedev, because he doesn't hit so big generally, you can almost get away with slicing to his backhand because he won't hit a lot of winners off it. He'll just say, okay, I'm going to hit a good enough backhand deep, change direction, and I'll try and kind of be in the front on the front foot. And he does win a lot of rallies almost in neutral, or I guess almost like aggressive neutral. If there was a mode in between neutral and aggressive, that's kind of where I feel like Medvedev is always rallying at. For Tsitsipas, though, against other players, that's not going to be good enough at times. And Coric, I think, exposed that. And I have said that the floated backhand slice is just not good enough. He needs to commit. I don't know about committing to it, but I just feel that it's something that Patrick Mouratoglou apparently has worked on with Tsitsipas for a long time, but it doesn't seem to have improved at all. And it's a strange one, because it's something that you would expect someone at that level to have a better backhand slice, especially if you're going to utilize it a lot and you have a one-hander. So I'm hoping he'll continue to try and improve it, or at least will improve it. But the US Open, the reason why I have him at 5 and not any higher is because I don't see him potentially making a semi-final or a final, because I feel like that is a big, big question mark. And depends on his draw, of course, but he's at 5. Number 6, then. Do we stick with FAA there? And it's an interesting one, because, Felix has had some really good wins in the last couple of weeks. Beat Cam Norrie after he lost to him and lost Carbos, and then lost to a very inspired Coric. So beat Diminer this week and Sinner. Great wins. And Canada beat Nishioka, Nori, and then lost to Rude. So made the quarterfinals in both tournaments. What are we thinking? I mean, does that warrant being at number 6, or do we go Cam Nori, who I guess made what the round of 16, losing to Felix, and then made the semifinals. He had wins over Nakashima, Van der Zandt, Schulp. Okay, beat Alcaraz, that's a big one. Murray, Shelton, Rune. I think wins wise, Felix has got the better and notable wins. So I'm going to stick with Felix at 6, and I think I have pretty not high expectations, but reasonably high expectations for the US Open. He's been really good at the slams, of course, and made the semi-finals last year, lost to Medvedev, and obviously Medvedev went on to win it in the end. His game, I think, was almost turned upside down after Tony Nadal joined, and the whole point of Tony Nadal joining was to improve his game, but especially on clay, and he did, because he did well at the French Open, won his first ever match then, and ran Rafael Nadal very close in 5 sets in the round of 16 match. So made a deeper run there, and generally in the clay court swing was much better. However, we got to Wimbledon, lost in the first round to Maxime Cressy, and you're thinking, okay, that's a really bad matchup, but not a great loss, of course. And generally, I think his forehand was tinkered a little bit, in the sense that he was hitting with more coverage over the net, a lot more topspin, less kind of flatter, sniper-like precision and pace through the court, which you would normally expect to see and want to see on a hard court or a grass court. And I think he was struggling to switch between the two, and not just switch, but actually utilize both types of styles when he needs to, because you can use both and skip between the two, and you should have different looks in a forehand on all surfaces. It's just how, like, for example, you're going to utilize the flatter forehand more on a quicker court than you would on a slower court, but you still might need to go to the more conservative, higher coverage over the net, higher topspin forehand when you're defensively trying to get in to stay in the rally, when you're trying to make a lot more balls and then get forward to get that shorter ball to then step in. So there's a lot of different things that you can utilize and different ways that you can use a forehand and a backhand, for example, as well, with the backhand slice, of course. So, when are you going to use a backhand slice? You're going to use that a lot more on a quicker, lower bouncing court. On a clay court, you probably won't use it as much, or you shouldn't really be using it as much, because it's not going to be as effective. So that's something that I think he was having to combat and having to adjust to. A new coach, a new kind of tinker in his playing style, and I think now it's come to fruition. I think now he's got to the stage where he's comfortable with how he should be playing on different surfaces, and I feel like if he gets a decent draw, he may even be able to make a semi-final again. I can't see him making a final. I can see him making a final of a Grand Slam in the next 2 years. Whether he wins it or not remains to be seen. I don't know, but he's definitely promising. His counterpart and someone who has been, I guess, built alongside him as someone who might be able to win slams as well, or is just as talented and highly thought of, was Shapovalov, but he's not even anywhere near this list because his form has been pretty atrocious. This week, however, he did do better, so quick shout out to him, because his playing style is very exciting. We want to see that. Beat Dimitrov in a good match and end up losing in the end to Medvedev, who, there's no harm or no shame in losing to him. Well, let's wrap up the rest of them, because I think I'm going on a long time, aren't I? Number 7. Number 7, I think, will be Cam Norrie. We'll stick with him because some good wins, as I said. Murray, Felix last week, and Alcaraz is a great win, I have to say. So he's so consistent. He's Mr. Consistent for me, and I can see him making a round of 16, a quarterfinal, and who knows, even maybe a semi-final. He continues to impress and surprise me. The semi-final at Wimbledon, the way that he made it, I thought was impressive. Didn't really play anyone of note, I have to say, but that's not his fault. You can only play who's in front of you. Did take a set of Djokovic. I don't know how much bearing that really has on someone's form or performance, because Djokovic tends to potentially lose a set nowadays when he's trying to adjust to someone when he hasn't played them much, and that's what that seemed. But Nori is a player and a proponent of his hard work. His results are excuse the pun. His results are a consequence of his extremely, extremely impressive work ethic, and also someone who's squeezing the most out of his talent. And I feel like that's exactly what Nori is doing. And wish him nothing but the best. I don't think, who knows? Maybe he will win the slam. I can't see it happening. But in saying that, I think he has a lot to say on who is going to win slams, because he's the type of player that is quite tricky to play against, and he will, win perceived, or he will have and cause perceived upsets against some of the bigger players just because of his level of consistency. And a lot of players struggle with that. And also the fact that he's a lefty and has such a flat backhand in comparison to his forehand makes it even more interesting. And his serving is much improved as well. Number 8, I'm going to go with Hurkacz. I think, the win in Canada was really impressive to me. And I know that he lost early on in Cincinnati, but again, losing the first round or second round because he got a bye to Isner, he would have been very, very tired. And sorry, he made the final even. Sorry, excuse my French. Made the final of the men's singles title and won the doubles, and then made the final and lost to Pablo Carreño Busta. Beat Ruusuvuori, Ramos Vinolas, Nick Kyrgios, who Kyrgios seems to have problems with Hurkacz's game, interestingly. That's one player I would say I think has a little bit of, just a little bit of a mental edge, maybe. Casper Ruud in 3 sets, good win for Hurkacz there. And then Pablo Carreño Busta, great. I mean, he played out of his skin for that final. Cincinnati, lost to John Isner. So Hurkacz at 8 for me. Number 9, I'm going to go with Taylor Fritz. I think Taylor Fritz is someone who, I wasn't thinking about maybe having him in my power rankings in the first edition, but he keeps on providing me with, basically egg on my face, which I'm happy to take. Beat Murray, TFO, and lost to Dan Evans in the Canadian Open. Great win for Evans, by the way. Then tight one in 3 sets. Beat Baez, Kyrgios, Rublev. Great win there as well, and lost to Medvedev. I mean, no harm in that. Fritz for me at number 9 is a pretty solid choice. Won Indian Wells earlier in the year, and again, if he's fully fit, he's a massive server, power baseliner. He's dangerous, needs to work a little bit on his forecourt game, coming to the net and transitioning. But generally, he is an exciting player to watch, and I think he does enjoy playing at home as well. So Fritz at 9. 10 is a difficult one because you can give it to a few players. You could look at Coric, for example, and say, well, hold on, Coric won Cincinnati. Should he not be in there for Zon? Now, I think apart from Cincinnati, he hasn't done anything this year. I think that's the issue. Now, he will be seeded, by the way, at the US Open, which is incredible. Like, I'm really, really happy for him. But he lost in the first round of the Canadian Open to Cilic in straight sets. And before that, he played the German Open, lost in the quarterfinals, a walkover to Molcan, and was playing some challenges as well. Lost in Wimbledon. He got cancelled because he got injured. So, look, I mean, we can look at his results, though. Why don't we quickly go through them? Musetti, great win. Nadal, 3-setter, won that. RBA straights, Felix straights, Nori straights, and then Tsitsipas. I mean, blew him away in the final, honestly. So it was impressive. And he's been number 12 in the world before. His serve has somehow become really big, and I'm all for it. His backhand is, I would say, probably is elite. A forehand, inconsistent, but when it's on, it's on. So for me, he's dangerous. You could have him in there, and I wouldn't argue too much against it. But I'm going to go with someone who's had more kind of consistent results this year, and also someone who has had good US Open results as well, making 2 semifinals in the past. Also won Canada this year, beating Hurkacz in the final, beating Dan Evans, Draper, Sinner, Rune, and Berrettini on the way to the final. on top of also, losing to Kekmanovic in the first round, Cincinnati. Is there really much to talk about in that? Not really, because he would have been extremely tired. I'm going to go with PCB. Pablo Carreno Busta. Now, I think he warrants it. 2 US Open semifinals, a really good win in Canada. You might also say, hold on, what about Casper Ruud? Casper Ruud's had some good results this year. Of course, made the final of the French Open, different surface, but also in the semifinals of Canada, right? Lost in the first round, though, to Ben Shelton. That's a little bit of a cross against his name, unfortunately, but did beat Felix in Canada, beat Molcan, RBA, lost to her catch. I mean, that's not a terrible run of results. I just think PCB probably a little bit more in form. And Berrettini, someone who you would have thought, hold on, Berrettini should be in there, but his results have not really reflected where I think he should be come the US Open, and lost to TFO in a Cincinnati in the first round. TFO with a fantastic win there. I mean, it was a great match, and also lost in the first round to Pablo Carreno Busta. His ranking, I'm sure, will take some sort of dip. The US Open, though, is a tournament where he should have some success. So he is someone to keep an eye out for. I don't think he's going to be losing the first round, but you don't know. I'm lost in the quarters to Djokovic in 4 sets, but had a pretty easy run there being the 6th seed. So he's not as highly seeded at the US Open. He could get someone dangerous, but you know what? He's dangerous himself. And we'll talk more about him in the US Open preview. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. Leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. We are also going to be doing US Open contender videos. So it's like a player profile, about 5 minutes long probably, and I'll go through a few of the players that I think are contenders for the US Open and give you guys a little bit of a fact file on them, which I think will be quite interesting to do, something new and fresh. I'll also be doing, of course, a draw preview and predictions for both the men's and the women's for when the draw is released later this week. On top of that, we will be doing a collaboration with someone else as well, so doing a preview with another channel, which I'll release here. And to add to that, of course, we will also be doing an WTA Power Rankings. So keep an eye out for that. We'll release that later today. Thanks so much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you on the next video.